Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy big tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security post, and a breath-catching experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
Hello and welcome to this special interview with me, Mustafa Dabo. Today we are at the Ministry of Petroleum, and our big guest is Mr. Kerr Fatou. He is the Commissioner of Petroleum. We've come here to answer some basic questions surrounding the industry. Gambia is just a new country to petroleum-related issues. And Mr. Fatou is the go-to guy for information relating to this sector in the ministry. Mr. Fatou, welcome to this program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dabo.
Let's begin this with the basics. First, let's know who you are. I mean, what do you do with this ministry?
My name is Kerr Fatou, and I am the Commissioner for Petroleum. And my day-to-day activities would involve the administration of the petroleum licenses, as well as other agreements relating to petroleum operations. I mean, the Ministry of Petroleum has a Petroleum Exploration, Development and Production Act of 2004, which mandated the minister to grant petroleum licenses. My day-to-day activities would include assisting the minister in the process of granting petroleum licenses, which in itself is an elaborate undertaking.
Yeah, I was actually coming to that, because that would also require you vetting potential companies that are coming into this sector.
Yeah.
Say, for instance, if someone applies for the license, you're the one who is also going to go through the license to be able to advise the minister. That means you also ought to do some research to know the background of that company. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is correct. Basically, what we have had at the ministry is to develop a very robust, transparent, open, and competitive licensing process, through which we invite companies to submit first expression of interest through a process we call the RFI, Request for Information. Under the RFI, the companies, IOCs, that is the international oil companies, provide basic information on their basic corporate information, basic information on their technical competence, as well as their financial capacity or capability to undertake petroleum operations. Petroleum operations is highly technical undertaking, especially in the case of the Gambia, where operations are currently undertaken mainly offshore, in the offshore areas, meaning they are taken in the sea,
in the deep sea.
Yeah, in the sea, at very high water depths, at depths of up to 1,500 meters water. That means the technology that you need to undertake any activity in the form of research, investigation, or actual drilling needs to be state of the art. Therefore, for a company to be able to do that, the company has to meet some, certain basic financial and technical competence. So the RFI allows us to gauge or understand if a company would be able to undertake such an, operation. So that is the first step. We undertake, we do the RFI. Under the RFI, we screen companies based on the information that they provided to us. And of course, we also undertake some due diligence.
I suppose because
Exactly.
because a company could supply an information that may not necessarily be accurate.
Yeah, that is true. We will do our own due diligence, but often it is the case that the petroleum industry is a very, close-knit community. You know most of the companies operating in the sector. Most of the companies that are able to deliver on, work programs are known. It's not a business where you just get up one day and get into just because you have money or no. You need to have some, basic technical capacity or access to some basic technical knowledge or resources to be able to undertake petroleum operations, especially at offshore environment.
So perhaps the most basic question that every Gambian asks, when you meet a layman on the street, the question is simple. Do we have oil?
Do we have oil? We haven't found oil yet. We haven't found oil yet, but we are here because we believe we have, huge potentials to, discovering oil. Basically,
You use the word potential.
Potential, yeah. We believe, there are potentials for finding oil in the Gambia, because in looking for oil, basically what you are looking for, it's a petroleum system. You are right on top of the ground, or on top of on the sea, with equipment. Basically, what you are trying to do in this search for petroleum is to look for features underground that relate to the existence of petroleum. This is done through mainly seismic operations, that is seismic data acquisition. You acquire the data. From that data, you are able to, deduce the presence of, or otherwise, of certain features underground. These features, the presence of which are often, associated with the presence of oil. This is what you look for. With seismic, you can detect or you can, identify those features. Once you find those features, you believe there is oil. And in our trade, there is often a saying that you look for oil where you find oil. If you find oil in a block or in an area, like it is found in Senegal, the tendency or the normal
of us finding
exactly is to look around the areas surrounding Senegal. In 2016, Senegal made one of the largest oil discoveries just across the border from our blocks. All studies have indicated that, the features, in Senegal, within which oil had been discovered, also are found in the Gambia. So the likelihood of finding oil in the Gambia is very high.
The likelihood is very high.
Is very high, but we haven't found oil yet.
So which area in Senegal and Gambia Which area are we talking about?
Here we are talking about offshore areas that is deep down about 100 or so kilometers away from the shoreline. I have a map of the Gambia that I can show you.
Absolutely, we will be grateful.
Yeah, this map basically is very familiar. Must be very familiar to you.
Yes.
Yeah, this
is our small snake.
So this is the map of the Gambia.
Yeah.
This is the offshore area. This is the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
Okay, this is about 40 kilometers. This is about 40 kilometers. This is about 80 kilometers from the shoreline.
Let's spot a location to this. Where would you have Banjul here? I think it should be
Banjul is here. Banjul is here.
Here?
Yeah, Banjul is here. This is the north. This is Karton.
This is Karton?
No, yeah, this is Karton. This is Banjul.
North. So that means it's from here to here.
Yeah.
Like it would be something like 100 kilometers from Banjul.
Yeah, about, I mean, we are not looking for oil in one location.
Yeah.
We are looking for oil in an area.
In an area.
Yeah, so the last well that was drilled in 2018 was drilled about 70 kilometers from the shoreline.
Okay.
Yeah, so likewise in Senegal, this is the area that they are, I mean, exploring or searching for oil. This is again about 100 kilometers away from the, I mean, shoreline. Yeah, that is the...
Basically, we are looking at 6 prospective oil wells.
We are not looking... We are looking for oil over the whole Gambian jurisdiction. Yeah, the country is divided, as you could see in this map, into 6 exploration blocks, which are basically divisions of the country's jurisdiction into, I mean, plots.
Okay.
Or blocks, as we call them. Offshore, we have demarcated 6 blocks. We have demarcated 6 blocks offshore. We have demarcated the onshore area into 2 blocks.
So even on land, you expect?
Yeah, there is a possibility of finding oil, I mean, onshore areas. But the potentials are highest offshore area. Because like I said, looking for oil means looking for features on the ground often associated with the presence of oil. So those features have been, I mean, they are most prevalent in the offshore areas in the case of the Gambia. In some countries, it is mainly on the land, on land or onshore areas. But in the Gambia, the most likely area that we will find oil is in the sea.
So how much are we talking about if we find one?
How much of
like
what?
How much of quantity do we expect?
You know,
or is it too early to say that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, what you're doing is you're looking for features. Using the seismic information from the seismic, you can estimate the, I mean, possible volumes that can be contained in a certain structure or feature underneath. So normally when you hear about, I mean, such estimates, they are very, you know, preliminary. They are often very preliminary and conservative, I mean, estimates of what could potentially be in that area. But of course, you cannot be sure unless you know in the first place there is oil. So yeah, what you do is trying to locate certain features. If you find those features, you can use, I mean, formulae to calculate the potential, I mean, volume that could be contained in those features.
Okay, so if you look at FAR, I mean, FAR was the company that had started our own. I think the last test drill was done by FAR. And it turns out they were not so fortunate. But when they did their 3D seismic survey and the information that came out was that there's a likelihood that there is an oil reserve. And it turns out, at least as facts stand right now, I don't know whether it will change in the future. It turns out that we don't have oil at that location. That points out to the risk, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In the field.
Yeah, yeah. Petroleum exploration is anyone who understands, the science of how you acquire the data, process, locate the well, knows it's a highly risky, and uncertain, business. Like I said, the way you undertake or the processes that leads to the decision to drill a well are scientific processes, but they never can conclusively, inform you of the presence of, oil or gas in a particular location until you drill a well. All the work that you do is done on computers, in the preliminary phases. Until you drill a well, you're basically doing an investigation using the computer with seismic and some other information. So it's only when you drill a well that you can establish the presence or otherwise of oil.
So,
and when you get into the business, you also get into it with that understanding. And it is the
understanding that there is potential to lose huge amount of money.
Yeah. It's actually most of the time exploration wells in areas, like the Gambia called the frontier areas, are often dry wells. Yeah, majority of such wells will turn out to be dry. Occasionally you will find oil, but most of the time you find no oil. If you look at countries like Senegal, before finding oil in 2016, they have drilled, over 100 wells in Senegal. Yeah. If you go to countries like Guinea-Bissau, they've also drilled up to, I think, over 30 wells. So it is normal that you drill a well in, frontier areas like the MSGBC basin, that is our basin, not to find oil.
And it turns out it's dry.
Yeah, it is dry. So when you go into this business, you go with that understanding.
So in this business, you don't give up. You have to keep moving from one end to another.
Of course. Yeah, of course. It is their business. It's the business of the exploration companies to look for oil. Most of the time, they don't find oil. But when they do, it pays off and covers
the losses.
The losses or the previous failures that they encountered. Yeah, because oil, as you know, is highly lucrative, commodity.
Let's talk about, we know FAR, the Australian company, is the one that had done a test drill. Recently also, BP has come in. BP is a British oil giant. Are there other companies, and how did you go through the process of licensing these companies?
Yeah, like I said to you, we currently have 8 blocks. Of course, as a result of the very small size of our country, out of the 8 blocks, 2 are licensed to FAR. FAR is also working with Petronas. That license was originally, granted to a company called Camag. Camag later
Erin.
changed its name to Erin. Erin farmed out to FAR, meaning they dispose of part of their, the interest, percentage interest in the license to Erin, to FAR. FAR in turn farmed out or disposed of part of their shares to Petronas. So currently you have Petronas and FAR, because Erin
jointly on the two.
Yeah, jointly owning the A2 and A5 licenses. We call them. We gave the licenses or the blocks codes. It's from A1 to A6, A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, and A6, as well as upper river and lower river blocks. Those are the 8 blocks in the Gambia, or 8 blocks into which our jurisdiction have been divided. So, in other words, you have two, as I said, you have 2 companies, Petronas and FAR, on A2, A5. We recently licensed A1 to BP. And the way the petroleum industry...
That's A1.
Yeah, A1 to...
That's the one that's being disputed with...
African Petroleum. Yes, yeah. But it's now been licensed to BP. And as you know, this industry is all about reputation, credibility. Once you have one company with highly credible company in your territory, on your blocks or acreages, it normally attracts some other companies
to come.
Yeah, who would, see that as, signs or indications of the existence of some basic, systems or structures to allow them to operate in such a country.
Interesting. So you think the BP's coming is a good news?
Yeah, it's a very good, it's a very good, thing for the country's petroleum industry. Apart from the petroleum industry, it could have, a very positive, signal, or send a very positive signal to other investors interested in, the Gambia's, economy, investing in the Gambia.
So, in terms of, when they come, I know the initial test drids, the initial studies, the 3D seismic survey, they are the people who take all this, they incur all this cost.
Of course, yeah.
And the Gambia government just issues the license and sit down.
Yeah, indeed.
And say, until you get, when you get something, we come in.
Yeah, we don't sit down. We play a role in the after the grant of licensing. We played very active role in the implementation, without which they wouldn't be able to, when you grant a license, there are always terms and conditions for the operator to fulfill. Investment in the petroleum, sector, especially offshore, is a huge investment that runs into tens of millions of dollars, or in some instances, hundreds of millions of dollars. For you to make such a commitment, you need to get a good understanding of the geology. And during that study, extensive engagement takes place with government. For example, when you came in, actually, we were on a conference call with the BP. We were on a conference call with the staff of BP. Basically, one of their requirements, is to conduct an environmental impact assessment. For them to do that, they need to understand the legislations or the legislative, framework that
guides that.
Yeah, guides, or that, regulates the environment, or that regulates the performance of EIA. This is environmental impact assessment. So we have to assist them, one, understand the legislative framework, the institutional arrangements. When they come, which institution do they talk to first? Which other institutions do they need to meet? Who are the local consultants they could work with? These are some of the things, at these preliminary stages of their, efforts to undertake the EIA, that is the Environmental Impact Assessment, which is a license requirement. They need to engage us with. Having said that, in the implementation of the actual drilling, there would be continuous engagement between them and government.
Would you go to the test drill site to see what they're doing?
Of course, we'll go there. But like I said, the test drill site in itself is the last, the activity to be undertaken during the, long to very, busy or very, eventful 2 years for these companies. Extensive geological, geophysical work have to be undertaken prior to that. They have to acquire the seismic, which in itself is a, huge, operations requiring, vessel costing tens of millions of dollars in the first place, requiring vessels to go offshore, acquire the seismic data. That seismic data needs to be processed. After it is processed, it needs to be interpreted, and then based on that interpretation, decisions are made where to drill the well.
Interesting. So, in terms of percentage issues, how do you discuss that? I believe this is perhaps one of the most controversial issues.
No, it's not that controversial. It's a little bit complex and difficult for many people to understand. But once it is made, once it is, simplified, it is not controversial. Like I said, undertaking exploration is a very risky and capital-intensive business. FAR last year spent about $40 million and ended up with a dry well.
And in that they pay the license of the authorities for license.
They've made some payments to government.
Okay.
But normally the license, the license is not sold.
Okay.
A license is given, it's like a permission or a right to undertake. Petroleum licenses do not, in the Gambia at least, are not paid for. You don't
buy. But do they pay anything?
Yeah, they do pay some things to government, but they do not, pay for the
license.
Yeah. They pay for the surface rental. They pay for the, area. They have a license to operate. They pay for the right to use that area. We call it this surface rental fees.
Is that usually expensive?
Not that much for some countries.
You're talking about in the range of?
Yeah, for some countries it can be like $5 per square kilometer.
In the Gambia?
In the Gambia, it's, of course, every license have its terms and conditions. For the BP license, it's about 250 US dollars per square kilometers. For FAR license, if I'm not forgotten, it's about 150 US dollars per square kilometer. But it varies for different blocks or different licenses. The commercial terms of licenses are a reflection of the geology or the prospectivity of the block for which the license is issued. So you can have, different, commercial terms for different licenses based on the value or their perceived values.
Interesting. So, usually, talk us through the percentage terms you usually, how do you decide that?
Decide that, there are, in our licenses, there are series of revenue streams for government. In other words, there are different avenues through which government gets, revenues during the life of the petroleum or the life cycle of a petroleum project. Petroleum projects are often, divided into exploration period, development period, and then production period. During the exploration period, surface rental is one of the revenue avenues through which government gets revenue. Our licenses also have what we call training and resources fees paid to government. Often, or almost all the licenses also have some signature bonus paid to government at signature, as the name implies. In addition to those upfront or early, revenues accruing to government, governments also have the right to participate in all the licenses that we have signed. They would participate in the FAR Petronas license. Government can participate at development phase, because during exploration, it is largely spending by the company. And it is a normal practice that government wouldn't contribute towards that. And therefore, they may not, be a licensee during that period. But once oil is discovered, government can choose to be a party to the license by taking up to 10%, or in some instances, in our cases, up to 15%, of the license interest.
Do you get that with BP?
Yeah, with BP we already have. Okay, the difference between the BP and the FAR licenses, one of the differences is that with the BP agreement, government is a party at signature. Government has 10% interest in the license at signature.
10% interest with the BP?
Yeah, with the BP license.
That means 10% of every production?
Yeah, would be going to government, would be owned by government. But also 10% of the cost that would lead to the production would also have to be borne by government.
So government would put up money inside?
Of course, if we make, during the exploration period, government, during the searching for oil, government will make no contribution.
Yes.
But once oil is found, government will be obliged to contribute towards developing the infrastructure needed to extract the oil. Government would be required to also, contribute towards the operations for the oil to be produced. So in addition to the 10% that goes to government in the FAR license, immediately at signature or after signature, government also would be receiving or would be entitled to royalty, what is called royalty, of, which would be 12.5% of every, production. Yeah, every production, 12%, 12.5 goes to government. So government is entitled to 10%. In addition, of course, government's 10% will be held. It is envisaged that it will be held by the National Oil Company, which is the GNPC. The 12.5% is royalty, goes again to government. Apart from that, one key source of revenue would be taxes. Mainly, CIT, that is corporate income tax, which in the Gambia is up to 30-something 35 or so percent goes to government. You know, so it is on the face sometimes misunderstood that or misconceived that governments have very minimal, interest or percentages. Yeah. But if you look at the whole picture, governments can have significant or the lion's share of the monies generated from these operations. Just make a quick, calculation of the various percentages.
I was actually going to come to that. When these issues come up, there are those who say, well, this is 10% is too small. Even when we have 15% in reality, it's also too small. Maybe we should do it ourselves. Do we have the capacity?
No, we don't.
That kind of...
we don't. No, not many governments have the capacity. Governments are not good in doing business. We all know that. This is not unique to the Gambia. Oil companies operate, globally across the globe, in Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, everywhere in the USA, in England, in Malaysia, in Norway. The business of looking for oil, developing oil when it is found, or developing the infrastructure when oil is found, and the exploitation of the oil is done largely by private companies, for reasons we've just spoken about. Because no, sensible government would take taxpayers, 10, 30 to $40 million to put it in such a,
a risky adventure.
You don't do that.
And
no government will do that.
And it turns up empty.
Exactly.
You lose 50 million.
Exactly. Yeah. It is not. Their business is not a business for governments to be engaged in such risky, endeavors. Yeah. So one of the reasons is that, it's such risky. It's also such capital intensive. Not only that, it also the level of, technology, organization, and coordination needed to pull off, such operations are beyond the, what prevails in most governments or what exists in most governments.
So far we have two. FAR, Petronas together, BP together.
Yeah.
BP
alone.
Alone.
Yeah. And in each of those licenses, I have to, recall or remind you, government has a share. Yeah.
So the share in BP is 10%,
yeah.
in FAR is 15%.
Right, yeah, and then have the option, government has the option of increasing that share to 15%.
Okay, interesting. So in terms of these two companies, have they started work already?
Yeah, they've started.
I know FAR have done stuff, and they were not fortunate in their first test drill.
Yeah, they are continuing to assess other prospects, that is, other potential locations to look for oil.
Okay.
Yeah, to
FAR
drill
is
another
still continuing.
Yeah, they are continuing to do that. Yeah.
To look for other places.
Yeah, they are looking at other prospects. Yeah.
And BP?
BP, as you know, just signed the licensing with government on the 30th of April. Notwithstanding, I said when you came in, they've already started work on their work program. The licenses, like I said, are structured in such a way that there are work programs or commitments, to be performed by the companies.
So you deal with it one phase at a time?
Exactly. Within a particular time period, the first two years, you are expected to do, A, B, and C. But importantly, in our case, you are expected to drill a well at the end of the the first 2 year period. For you to drill that first well, you also require to do A, B, C, and so on. So as soon as, and these are all very are accompanied with very strict timelines. So as soon as you sign the license, you have to start work towards achieving that objective of drilling a well. So BP has already, hit the ground. They hit the ground running. Yeah.
So do we expect others also to come in?
Yeah, indeed.
Are you working on marketing?
Yeah, indeed. That's one of our engagements. If you look at our work program for the year, it has a component of marketing marketing and promotion.
Okay.
We attend numerous, international oil and gas events where we market the Gambia's prospectivity, petroleum prospectivity. Yeah, we, also meet with all the time meet with potential, companies who would investors in the sector, at such events to sell to them the prospectivity, what we have, what we believe the prospectivities of our, blocks are. Yeah, so we do that. It's a continuous.
And what are the response so far been?
Okay, the response have been very good, very good. That's why we have BP in the Gambia. It's through our concerted, efforts over the past years, many years, that has rewarded or resulted in signing the A1 license with BP. I think there is a question that you ask. I would want to, delve into a bit. That is how the licensing. I started it actually. I didn't complete how the licensing process, is managed in the Gambia. This is very important because we've had some very, significant success in establishing, a licensing system that is world class in its, outcome. What we did over the past 2 years is to set up a committee, a multi-institutional committee comprising of major government institutions that have mandate relating to the petroleum operations. These include the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Finance, the National Environment Agency, the tax authorities, and so on and so forth. We also, in addition, work with the African Legal Support Facility of the African Development Bank to engage a consultant, an international law firm, or an international consortium of law firms as well as technicians who assisted the government through the licensing, through the management of the licensing process. So the committee working with the consultants first review the existing license model. These are very complex agreements requiring diverse expertise in the areas of geology, geophysics, law, finance, environment. So because of that, we constituted that multi-expert committee. Under the committee also we had the subcommittees, which are expansions, which are expanded by including some other institutions. So the first thing they did was to review the model. I explained the RFI, which was basically a screening process So the license, the companies have to be subjected to an RFI, which is a screening process. After that, at the end of that screening, companies with the minimum, competence to undertake, exploration activity or operations would be identified. They would be required to submit a comprehensive proposal in terms of, commercial terms. They will also make a submission on their technical competence in the form of the number of exploration licenses they hold, the number of wells they've drilled in the past. Series of, criteria, technical criteria they need to provide information on. Then this, once they submit this proposal, it is evaluated by the committee. At the end of the day, the most responsive to the expectations defined in the RFP, which is the proposal request, would be engaged in negotiations before a license is signed with that company. So this is the process we have, undertaken in licensing BP, and it has resulted in a very well-defined toolkit for licensing in the Gambia, which we intend to replicate in the future.
So I have kept you for too long, but I just want to sound your opinion on this one before I leave you. You said you go out to talk
market
to
and
to
promote,
market.
yeah.
So this you go to oil
events, conferences, summits, and so on. Yeah.
Okay, and talk to people about the potential that this country has.
Yeah.
Do we have gas, oil and gas? We say.
Yeah, oil and gas. Two substances of the same constituents.
Okay.
Constituents existing under, existing as either oil or gas based on the, environment. Yeah, the basic, constituent of oil and gas are the same. Hydrogen, and they call them hydrocarbons. Hydrogen and carbon are the basic elements in oil and gas, that is petroleum, fluids and liquid. There's what is called the hydrocarbon chain, on which you have oils with, specific number of hydrogen and carbon. Normally smaller number of hydrogen and carbon. You have larger number of hydrogen and carbon constituting the oil part. Yeah.
Based on you can based on what we expect so far, do we expect that we have a large reserve, or do we don't know?
Yeah.
The potentials of a large reserve, or we don't know.
Yeah, the potentials for
because I
large
had
reserve,
first said we could have up to 1 billion barrels in where they were looking at the time.
Yeah, 1 billion, if you look at the size of the Gambia, in terms of volume of hydrocarbon, you could have, of course, billions of barrels, but like I said, oil needs, for oil to occur or to be present, requires the existence of a number of elements.
Yeah. So you have to figure out.
You have to understand, evaluate, and then from that estimate the volume that that could potentially exist in a particular, identified system of those elements. Yeah, so it depends on the particular, what we call prospects. If the prospect that you are looking at is huge, the volume that it could hold potentially can be huge. But I'm just saying, to have billion barrels of oil, you don't need, I mean, you don't need hundreds of kilometers of area and hundreds of kilometers of depth to have a billion barrel.
Oh, so it's not determined by the size of the area you are looking at?
Yeah, it determined by, of course, it is determined by the size of the prospect. That is the potential area that the oil is. You know, but I'm saying, I mean, if it is only based on the size of the country, it could. But I'm saying oil is also, we know for sure, is not found everywhere in the Gambia. There is a small area that potentially oil could be. Even in that potential small area, you have to narrow down on a very small, area or prospect. But even with that small prospect, you can still get, billions of barrels of
and which could worth probably billions of dollars.
Yeah, depending, of course, on the price of oil. You know, the price of oil around this time would be over around $60 per barrel. So if you find 1 billion barrel, it's a lot of money. But remember, lots of, billions also goes into developing the infrastructure that you need to remove that oil. Yeah.
Because finding it is one thing, exploration is another.
It's even more complicated. Finding it is one thing. Just finding oil is not a guarantee that you will even exploit or remove that oil from the ground. No. You can find oil, but after the study, you will realize that getting that oil out is not economically viable because it will cost you more than you will sell it for. Yeah, that happens.
That happens?
Of course, of course.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you can find oil the oil would not be in quantities that would warrant spending the monies it would require to take that oil out of the ground.
So from finding to exploration, what gap are we looking at?
Yeah, the oil cycle, like I said, is the petroleum project cycle is divided into 3 broad phases. Phase 1 is the exploration period. During the exploration, the exploration phase is divided into 3 periods. The exploration phase is divided into 3 periods. Period 1 is 2 years. In our license, is period 1, 2 years. Period 2, 2 years. Period 3, 2 years. So a total of 6 years during the exploration phase. After the exploration phase, you have a development phase if you find oil and assess and evaluate it to be commercially viable for production. Development takes between 3 to 5 years. So that is about 11 years. Once you finish development, then you start to produce oil. So that's
you are looking at more than the 2 terms of a president.
Exactly. That's about, 11 years. 11 years. Normally, what happens is after the first well is the drill. If you discover oil, this is within the first 2 years. If you discover oil, you have to drill more wells just to understand the volume, to get a better understanding of the volume, the properties, the technical, the geology of the reserve, and also do an economic evaluation of the discovery. That is to investigate or study or assess whether, I mean, this oil can be economically, I mean, removed from the ground and sold. You know, you have to estimate how much it would cost you to do that, and then check this against the price of oil at the time. If it is economic, you will consider it to be a commercially viable discovery.
Okay. So finally, as you deal with oil, I mean, we know that some of the countries where oil exploration is currently, sometimes even the BP, you remember the BP oil spill. Somewhere, I think in Brazil, some years ago.
No, I think it was in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Mexico, Gulf of Mexico,
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So you have in Nigeria, you have incredible history of that. And so I think probably when you are issuing these licenses, you are taking into account some of those things.
Indeed.
The environmental impact.
Indeed, when you came in today, the guy who left this office last came from the National Environment Agency.
Okay.
The other person is an environment specialist working with the GNPC. So environment is key, I mean, consideration made during the evaluation of the BP proposal, or during the assessment of every license that is issued from the ministry. I mean, like I said, we have a committee. Part of that committee, the National Environment Agency is part of that committee. There is a subcommittee called the Environment Subcommittee. When BP, even before BP, I mean, submitted their proposals, that committee looked at, I mean, the environmental laws and the requirements for undertaking, I mean, mineral operations, in particular petroleum operations. They've also undertaken study tours to Ghana just to understand how Ghanaian institutions and authorities interact and how they have catered for the environment in their licenses. All of that had been factored into our license for BP. Yeah, so the environment is, I mean, a critical, I mean, consideration government made in granting the BP license. Just the meeting we had was on the EIA requirement, the BP EIA requirement. We require them even before starting the implementation of the work program to undertake an environmental impact assessment. So in response to that request, they have asked a series of questions, and working with that broader, I mean, government institutions, we provided them with some answers, and we will continue to engage them, I mean, under the environment subcommittees purview.
So, Mr. Barrow, thank you very much for speaking to us. We've kept you for too long.
Yeah, about an hour.
About an hour.
Yeah.
And we're very grateful we could speak to you on some of these issues.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I mean, it's our pleasure, and from time to time, if there are questions that you have in relation to the sector, we'll be more than happy to provide, I mean, our thoughts and answers to.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Dawo.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes